Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining us here at IndieBio for our Pet Care Innovation Prize event 2019 here in San Francisco. We're pretty excited to see you here. The format of this is going to be that we're going to talk a little bit about the pet care ecosystem, what's going on, what those opportunities are for startups. We'll tell you really briefly about the Pet Care Innovation Prize. A lot of you guys know about it. I'm happy to share cards about it and everything. But the first thing we want to start with is tell you a little bit about what's going on already here in town. You may not be aware that in the region there are a lot of pet care startups that are doing some pretty exciting things. And so you had a chance to meet them at the tables before, but we're asking 6 founders to come up and give you just a very short introduction to what they're doing. Then we'll dive into the panel discussion. So we're going to start with Leo.
Hi, I'm Leo Trottier, CEO and founder of a company called CleverPet. We make programmable Wi-Fi connected game consoles for dogs and cats. The way that they work is you put treats or kibble in, that'll hold 2.5 cups, and then our device and you teach your dog to play electronic touchpad light-based games that can get more complex as your dog gets better at them. Last weekend, actually, we open sourced all of our software. We discovered that what people really love about the product is the ability to see what their dog or their cat is thinking and can figure out. And we're really excited about the future because within the next 12 months, we'll be launching V2 of our product, which will let people discover even more about what their dogs and cats like and how their minds work and allow people to connect with them even better. So that's what we're doing.
Hello everyone, my name is Lynn and I am the founder of DogLog, a free pet care app that helps take the stress out of pet ownership. We were inspired to create this app after our dear dog Joy became sick and we wanted to make sure that she got the best care possible in her last months. Since then, thousands of dog owners have used the app to better coordinate their daily pet-related chores, track long-term health trends, remember all the important medicines and appointments that they need to take them to, and lots more. So DogLog is available on both the App Store and Android. Please try it out for yourself and see how it can help you make sure your pets always get the care that they deserve. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Michael Klotzman. I'm with Okava Pharmaceuticals, and our mission is to develop life-saving medicines for dogs and cats. Specifically, we're developing medicines for chronic diseases. 10, 15 years ago, if Fido got sick, you went to the vet, and the vet said, hey, Fido had a good run. It's Fido's time. In today's world as a society, pets are an integral part of the family, which means that we will do anything and everything possible to keep our pets healthy. So at Okava Pharmaceuticals, we are taking best-in-class human medicines and optimizing them for pets by leveraging existing advanced drug delivery technologies. This is a highly efficient, cost-efficient, R&D efficient means of entering a massive market that's targeting over $10 billion in annual sales. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Natalie, and I'm founder and CEO of the company GotYu. And if anyone has watched Black Mirror, we are very excited because we've invented technology which was predicted by Black Mirror. We've invented the first implant that goes here to the pet, and it tracks not only RFID tag of the pet, but it tracks its vitals like temperature, pulse, ECG, etc. So thus, we're able to save lots of costs on vet bills and, of course, extend happy animal life.
Hi everyone, I'm Teresa Piazza, the founder of Puppy Mama. Here, stay right here. Our community has grown over 22,000 women dog moms around the world, and we have a super fan base of 600. These women, I've talked to them, a lot of them, and surveyed them. What do they constantly tell me? 2 things. They want community and convenience. And that's what our mission at Puppy Mama has become. First, with community, we are doing it through social media, but also we're releasing our first book in October. We're gonna have a book series. Our first book called Raising a Doodle. We want to inspire the lifestyle that these dog moms want. Second, we want to deliver convenience through our app, and in order to do so, we're raising capital. I would love to talk to any of you about that more afterwards. Thank you very much for your time.
Hey everyone, I'm Lindsay Rubin. I am the VP at VDog. We are a local San Francisco business, and we make food and treats for dogs totally from plants. So all of our products are meatless and vegan, and we've been committed to that since 2005. So we've been around for 14 years now with thousands of dogs enjoying our products. We're mostly an e-commerce company. So we sell on our website as well as Chewy and Amazon and in select retail stores around the country. We also just expanded internationally under our brand name vPlanet. We work with veterinarians and PhDs in animal nutrition to ensure all of our products are formulated correctly and that they taste really good and the dogs love them. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to introduce our panel here in just a second, but and if you could grab the mic, Carlton, and we'll actually ask you guys to pass it down. The purpose of tonight's event is to really talk about what's going on in the pet care space. We've got some exciting panelists, but we also, as you've heard, we've got some exciting startups in the room. What we do is we run the Pet Care Innovation Prize. It's sponsored by Purina. Anybody can apply to it. We supply cash and business support, which includes publicity, a boot camp about the pet care industry, and access to large trade shows so that you can get some visibility. 5 startups per year, no strings attached. You don't have to. There's no equity required. It's completely about supporting your business. Through that, we've built a large network of pet care startups that we know. And Blair, sitting next to me, is with Purina, and he'll be able to speak to that a little bit. But what we see at these events is that because the community gathers and finds out that there are other companies involved in this space, that there's a lot of opportunity, they find out that they can support each other and grow. And we see a lot of excitement here. So we actually have, I believe, 4 or 5 companies, past winners of the Pet Care Innovation Prize, that come from the Bay Area. And we're actually pretty excited to be back here and hope that we see some new things. But let's start a little bit with, let's go down the line here. And if you guys would just tell us a little bit about yourselves, your journey. We're going to start with Carlton. Carlton's a serial entrepreneur that's now in the pet care space, and he's probably got some perspective about what makes it good for him.
That's right. So I'm with AnimalBiome, and we leverage the latest microbiome science to improve the gut health of dogs and cats. And we actually got our start right here in IndieBio, being a life sciences company. And we do 2 things. We have a microbiome test kit, so you can see what's going on inside your pet's gut and compare it to healthy. And it's reached the point where we can now provide very specific, personalized nutrition recommendations so that you know whether the food you're feeding is the right food. And then our second product addresses the 10 to 20 million dogs and cats out there that suffer with chronic digestive disorders. And we have a gut restoration supplement, which is a fecal transplant in a capsule. And we've been out in the market now for a couple years. And we started here at IndieBio. We're finalists in the Pet Care Innovation Prize last year and have been a big promoter of the pet care industry here in the Bay Area.
Thanks, Carlton. So, June, you're with IndieBio. You're the scientific director here at IndieBio. And tell us a little bit about what you guys do and how the pet industry fits into the larger biospace.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, welcome to IndieBio. And IndieBio itself is actually downstairs, and there are labs down there. Come grab me afterwards if you want to take a look. And so we're a startup accelerator. We've been around for 4 years, invested in 105 companies across all areas of biotech, from what you traditionally think of biotech as therapeutics, diagnostics, all the way to future food, so like lab-grown meats and global climate change related companies. We are really interested in pet area. We specifically have 2 companies that are specifically devoted to pets, such as AnimalBiome, another one called Vet Therapy, that is a stem cell treatment for dogs, horses, etc., for wound healing. And then we have a lot of other companies that are doing things in the healthcare space that, of course, can be adapted towards pets as well. So from microbiome, from to diet, and also therapeutics too, which we can probably talk a little bit more about how a lot of these therapies can be applied in the pet space.
Great. Thanks, June. Next, we have Leo. Leo's with CleverPet. CleverPet is a member of the Pet Care Innovators Network, so it's a network of founders that get together on a regular basis that we help support and everything. But you guys are doing some pretty cool stuff with, we heard you do a little bit of a speech before that, but can you talk a little bit about what else you guys are doing and how it relates to being a founder in the space?
So yeah, I got started in this company when I was a PhD student in cognitive science, actually at UC San Diego. And actually the idea for what we were doing came from noticing that depth cameras were actually the first animal-friendly computer interfaces. So if you think about it, you've got millions of these devices. They're on top of a TV. They're pointed out at a room. The dog is there. He's got nothing to do. The cat's there. They've got nothing to do. You've got a fast computer. You've got a fast video display, a big video display. You've got a great audio system. You've got a Wi-Fi connection. All you need to do to add to that whole system, if you wanted to provide a really rich, entertaining environment for the animals that are in the house, is the ability to provide really precisely delivered food rewards. So that was the thing that started it all. We were like, hey, we need to. We looked out. We wanted to make like cool training interactive software that could do anything. And we realized that the hardware that we needed just didn't exist. There was nothing that was beautiful, dog and cat proof. The cat thing I made for my prototype involved like putting PVC pipe on the side of a tall bookshelf and then have a treater at the top of the bookshelf. Otherwise, my cats would just break into whatever feeder I created. So we needed to make something that was really animal proof, that looked really good. And then the reason why we added the touchpads around it was because we wanted it to be useful out of the box. So that's what we released. When we went to market, the funny thing about the pet industry is it's very easy to, it's like a very emotional industry, right? You look at it and you're like, oh, like I know kind of what I want, and what I want is cute pets, and then you stop thinking. You're like, cute pets, and then like all the thinking stops. We kind of fell into that trap. We were like, okay, well, we're just going to go straight after the middle of the market, where all the money is, where all of, everyone who feels guilty about the fact that their dog or cat is alone all day. And what the mistake we made was that we didn't realize that we were actually in a new category, right? And if you're in a new technology category, the people you want to be going after are the people that will be there with you with the novelty of it, who will like help you. I analogize this to like you're going to a new continent. You want to be there with the people that will chop down the trees and like build the roads. You don't want to be there with the people who insist on there being a house there and a bed and everything already made for them. You want to be there with the pioneers. So what we've actually done in the last 6 months is we've done a little bit of a pivot, and we're going after the people who are super interested in discovering how their dog or their cat's minds work, interested in creating new games, interested in seeing the potential of these animals that they live with. And that's just been closer to kind of where our origins were, and it's been much more fruitful. It's a value proposition that we can really deliver on very quickly. And then, once the bushwhacking's all been done, we can bring on everyone else in. So if you're in the world of pet, it's really valuable to like not fall into the emotional like trap. There's a huge pitfall, and it is pets are cute and beautiful and emotional. And if you go there too quickly, you're not going to be able to build up the rest of the structure you need to actually deliver on the potential of the market.
Thanks, Leo. And last is Blair Morgan. Blair's with Purina and 9 Square Ventures. Purina is the backer of all of the activities that we do. But Blair, maybe tell a little bit about yourself, and then kind of tell about how the startup world fits into Purina larger.
Okay. So I'll excuse me, I kind of got a cold nursing it today, but first off, I'm just going to say Leo changed how I eat bacon. We were having it was a couple months ago, we were eating breakfast, and we all ordered bacon and eggs, and he wasn't eating bacon. I said, why is that? And he told me that pigs are, what did you say? Pigs are
smarter than dogs.
Pigs are really smart, and they probably feel. So now I can't eat bacon anymore. So, anyway, so yeah, it tastes so good. But in any case, let's see. I'm Blair Morgan. Been with Purina a little over 20 years. Background largely in our marketing organization. Probably 15 years running some of our big dog and cat businesses, and I ran our cat business up until about 6 years ago when we organized a innovation group. So that group was meant to play on the fringes of incubating new ideas that our big brands and businesses couldn't. Part of that was organizing a corporate venturing group called 9 Square Ventures, and so I'm an officer in that. And then part of having that corporate venturing group was we wanted to have some way of facilitating, engaging, and discovering the fun and exciting innovations and technology that are out there. So that's the Innovation Prize. And over the past number of years, Dan's been part of helping us with that, and it's been exciting to see. There's lots of things that strategics can bring to a new startup, and there's lots of things that you may believe we can bring that maybe we can't, or it isn't time yet. But we love to have those discussions. Certainly there's, I can talk about more about Purina later, but we feed 1 in 3 pets every day of the year, day in and day out, and that's a big responsibility that we take serious, making sure that there's the science and the quality behind everything we make. So anyways, we're proud to do that and pleased to do that. So
great. Thanks, everybody. So let's just start a little bit with the panel and people in the audience. If you start getting questions or whatever, if you raise your hand, let us know you have a question. We certainly want to hear from you. But just to kind of tee things off, Carlton, you were with startups outside of pet. Can you talk a little bit about what makes pet different, both, from a good and bad side, or, what's the positives and what's the negatives from a more traditional Bay Area startup?
Yeah, that's a good question. And part of it is that they're cute and furry and lovely. And so like being in the pet space sort of fits with my core values in terms of how I think about the world. But I've been in business a long time. And what I look at, it's a $73 billion market. And there are a lot of segments of it that are really ripe for disruption, whether it's sort of the IoT or sort of the hardware side of it, or even in the food space. There are a lot of really interesting companies that are coming up with just different proteins, different ways of thinking about food, different delivery models, and I think Purina is doing a good thing to like keep a pulse on what's going on, because people love their pets. They're spending a lot more money on them, and I won't say it's not a less competitive market in any sense. But if you have a passion for something or for the space, and you are bringing your talents from outside the industry, you're able to see places for innovation that the incumbents just don't see. And there have been some big exits in the animal health and the pet world. There's all the way from the food side, like Blue Buffalo and several others, but also, we just had someone join our team from Abaxis, which was in the animal health diagnostic space, which I came to learn is really profitable. Apparently, they could sell the same product in the pet market for a lot more money and a lot more margin. That's pretty cool. So I think it's a big market. I think maybe millennials are catching up with some of the earlier folks in the earlier generations, and they're just spending a lot more money on their pets. And I think their relationship with pets are different. Like when I grew up, my father said, I will not spend over X amount of money on this pet for medical care. And I talk to customers every week where they say something like, I spent $12,000 on this cat last year, and none of it worked. And so they're spending a lot of money and they're not happy with the solutions. So to me, that's a pretty attractive market.
June, can you speak a little bit about what you see as like how pet is different and similar to the larger biotech space?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was really well put. And actually, just kind of from a higher level, just looking at like evolutionary sociology, that we grew up in like tribes and with animals and whatnot. And as agrarian societies changed, and now industrial societies have really caused us to be really isolated from one another. So like loneliness is a huge epidemic, right? So pets are a way to help alleviate a lot of these like mental illnesses actually from people. There's studies around depression. There's studies from elderly that having someone to care for. As we know, people are having kids less in more developed nations, and in doing so, people end up pouring their love and their time into pets. So hence, millennials are really starting to spend money on pets because they can't afford or don't want a child. So pets are really an integral part of our society and integral part of a lot of our lives. Obviously pets don't live as long. And as we know, most of them are bred in certain ways that there's lots and lots of disease. We don't even know how all the genetics work, especially in dogs, right? Everyone's a mutt. And hopefully they're a mutt. If they're purebred, they're probably going to have more diseases. So how do you start alleviating those and having, balance the desirability of these pets versus the health of them, and knowing that they're not going to live very, very long either. So, so I think, biotechnology is definitely something that's happening in all areas of society. And of course, pets is arguably a product of biotechnology, of domesticating animals and breeding as well. So I think there's a lot of interesting ties to how to improve their health, how to potentially think about how to breed new pets, and of course nutrition and to keep them active and healthy. So and then on the flip side, I kind of mentioned from the therapeutic side. So of course we can give our animals these therapies that may already exist in humans, but pets in some ways can also be a platform for experimental therapies, because as we know, most drugs start in mice studies, but mice are actually a really, really horrible model. And a lot of drugs actually require multiple animals. A lot of people don't use apes because those are usually really expensive and really big. So like a dog or a pig is oftentimes a really good middle animal to test before humans too. So a lot of drugs are actually done in animals already and then transitioned into humans. So why not use those drugs that were designed for humans for the pets anyways? So I think there's a lot of ways that the pets in our lives can interface with development of health for humans as well.
Thanks, June. I'm going to pass it on down here to Blair. And just Blair, you guys, Nestle Purina Pet Care, but you're part of Nestle, a huge international nutrition company. So how does pets, how pet fits into the larger picture is you probably have a different perspective than from the startup perspective.
Well, that's a great question. So that's true. We are part of Nestle. Some of us that are old timers were there before Nestle acquired us. It was back in 2002. But it is one of the 4 key platforms within Nestle. And so when we speak of Purina, it's not just the global headquarters that's in St. Louis and the Americas business. It's Latin America, it's Europe, and it's Asia as well. And then we have 3 significant science centers: one in St. Joseph, Missouri, one over in France in Amiens, and then one over in Singapore. Over 1,000 scientists, nutritionists, geneticists. I'm not even sure I can name all the different scientists that we have. But there's a tremendous amount of effort given to pet health. So I think sometimes if there's one thing I would dispel, it's that we tend to think of Purina as food. And I think we would tell you that all of our work goes into health, and that nutrition is our most primary way of delivering that. But certainly a lot of interest and work going on in other areas. So hence, coming here to meet a lot of you guys thinking about health as well. So.
Great, thanks. Leo, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about, so you started out doing cognitive science at UCSD, right?
Yep.
And so tell me a little bit about what it's like to start a startup, and especially in this industry. Is it just a clear path? There's somebody gave you a book and you just followed it, and you're here 6 months later and everything is fine? Or talk a little bit about the journey to figuring this out, not just as a product. You talked a little bit about that, prototyping out of PVC and everything, but transforming into a business. How do you build it into a business that can scale and grow and be sustainable?
Well, I'm not sure I can speak that much to scaling, but
well, you have more scale. You have more scale than you used to have. So
that's true. Let's see. There's a lot. I think you can come in to, especially if you've been in academia for a while, you can come into the business world and think that things are a particular way. In the academy, people will give you the benefit of the doubt, right? So you're like, hey, I collected this data, and this is what the data showed, and then there's a kind of an expectation that you're going to be conservative in the claims that you make after you look at some data. You're like, I'm pretty sure that this phenomenon exists. I'm pretty sure that, this is the funny thing that scientists do all the time when they're talking about climate change stuff, is they're like, we're pretty sure there'll be, 1.6 degrees Celsius rise over some time period. And that's actually the scientists being really conservative. So the academy, there's like a lot of trust in the academy. And if you lie, if you say something more than it is, if you exaggerate,
if you embellish,
your reputation is done. Whereas, or sell, yeah, God forbid. Whereas the business world is the opposite. There's zero trust on anything. You can't just say that something's the truth and someone will believe you. It's never, and there's, as a consequence of it being kind of a low trust industry, I guess, or domain. Basically, everything you do is to compensate for that, and that was the thing that took a long time to learn, coming out of 10 years, 12 years in the academy. So I would say the other big part of it was just also recognizing that learning business is as much an enculturation process as it is a process of learning skills and techniques. And what do I mean by that? Well, enculturation is kind of like you go to France and you learn how to be like a French person, or you go to Spain, you learn how to be like a Spanish person. And until you kind of learn the norms and the things people talk about and the kind of routines that you have, people are going to look at you kind of strange. And if you go into business just kind of thinking that, I'm this person and I'm going to go into business, and you don't actually recognize what the practices are and how that you're actually learning a new culture, then again, your life is going to be more difficult. So that's kind of an abstract way of talking about things. More tangibly, when I started, the first thing we had to do was, put together a group of people, convince some folks that they wanted to drop everything they were doing and work on your project. That's hard. Then convincing people that they should give you money to do a thing. That's hard. Everything, anyway, I guess it was just hard. I should just say it's all hard. And then the other big phenomenon is you're confronted with problems that seem impossible. You think everything's over, and then actually you just grow, and it's not as big a problem as you thought it was. And this is the kind of thing that a million people have previously experienced, and then you encounter the next problem that you have to deal with. So I don't know. That was kind of a rambling explanation. I hope that was mildly.
It was at least entertaining.
Nothing to do with scale.
Yeah. Well, Carlton, maybe you could talk a little bit. So AnimalBiome, as you heard earlier, started out. They were a Pet Care Innovation Prize winning company. They were an IndieBio company, and so you guys started with some science that came out of UC Berkeley,
UC Davis.
UC Davis, so talk a little bit about how, once you have so once you have the science and once there's a product, then how do you grow a business? And obviously you've recently joined the team to help Holly, the founder, do that. So talk a little bit about how that has worked. Is it a linear thing, or how do you, are there eras in a startup's evolution? And then June, I'm going to ask you because you guys backed IndieBio, and hear your perspective on that as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. AnimalBiome.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see June's perspective on this. But so I was a early advisor and investor in AnimalBiome, so I was there for the whole journey, but joined full time in November. And our founder Holly, she's a microbial ecologist, PhD from Davis, postdoc at Berkeley and in Switzerland, and then was a project scientist at UC Davis. And so she's a hardcore academic researcher. And so I understand a little bit of Leo's journey because, if you've got a PhD, you sort of think you know something. And they sort of look at the business side of the world as, oh, that can't be that complicated. And so I think Holly realized that actually the business side of it is way more complicated than she expected. But one of the things that they really stressed here at IndieBio was don't just do the science and create a product. Think about the business. And they used to say revenue cures all. And so from early on, Holly got a product like literally down in that lab there. She created a whole new product that we've patented and got that out in the market in about 6 months. And we've been selling in the market for more than 2 years now, these two products. And so, I've done like really raw startups before in the software space, and we're translating basic research into a commercial product, and we're doing it much faster than I think anyone thought was possible. And so there is that struggle. Like, you're taking something really basic, there's still a lot that's unknown, and you talk to scientists like Leo or Holly, and they're just like, they will not overstep and sell it as something that it's not, and they shouldn't. And so that's really the struggle between the scientist founder and the business side, is how do you like push the edge but not fall over in terms of like how you position the product and what you sell.
So June, can you talk a little bit about how do you, when you see a company like that, so they've got some basic science or they've got this basic idea, how do you help them turn that into a business?
Yeah, absolutely. So being life sciences, everything here is hard tech, and so you usually come in with science. We also specialize with usually first-time founders and usually scientists themselves. Sometimes they have business folks that they have on their team, but usually it's a scientist who then becomes an entrepreneur and becomes the business person as well. And that's something traditionally that hasn't happened that way. Usually you get paired up with a business person and usually it becomes a huge conglomerate with lots and lots of people involved, which is why a lot of biotech startups haven't really started up in a grassroots way. We are able to do that because we provide a common lab and some funding, and really this program to try to train scientists and entrepreneurs. So how do we do this? I think actually tapping into what a scientist does, which is produce a hypothesis and go test it, and then iterate on that cycle. And you can actually approach business in that way. If you have a hypothesis of, oh, my customer might want my product X, now go out and actually test that, right? Go talk to those customers, get their feedback. Maybe you realize that they actually care about different parameters than what you originally thought. And then you go back to the lab and you rework that product and continue, right? This is the lean startup product development model. But in essence, this product design model is actually the scientific method. And so for a lot of scientists, if they can wrap their head around that, you don't have to get super like ego-driven in the science that you're building or the product that you're building and don't have an emotional attachment to it, but actually go out with a growth mindset and say, hey, I'm going to just see this as an experiment. I'm going to do a whole bunch of experiments very, very cheaply and try to find the best shot on goal. So that's what we do a lot here at IndieBio. We kind of call it a design program where oftentimes people do come in with that science and really in this time figure out where it goes. And both the product that you're selling is the physical product that you're giving to customers and you're getting money for, but also in some ways you're selling the vision too. You're selling the vision to investors to say, one day I will scale and this will be a very, very profitable business. So all of that is kind of building up the confidence, but then all of this is built on top of science too. So we do have to make sure that the science is top notch, that there is actually advancement in the science, and that you're always driving for that next question.
So I'm going to ask each of you, and we'll start with Leo, just put you on the spot here. So pet care industry, it represents, it's about $80 billion in the U.S. That's a combination of services, food, hard goods, veterinary, but also things like insurance and things like that. So what do you think, what do you think is actually interesting, like as you see the industry changing? Do you see it evolving, that there's, if you guys can talk a little bit about what do you think is interesting in the space that you think will be something that people are moving into in the new year? So like, for example, in the next years. So like, for example, you guys are doing cognitive, stuff for pets. 5 years ago, that would have been crazy talk. Where do you see that going? And do you see that like that's a huge services platform? Is that connect to something like the IoT or the smart home, or does it connect to behavioral, or where does that connect to? Why are you pursuing that?
So, one of the insights that at least seem to have come out from all of the stuff that we've been doing with pets is kind of deep questions about like what a relationship is and where it comes from, right? I like to think about a story, right? So if you're reading a novel and the character dies on the first page, you don't really care. If you read a novel and the character dies, in the last episode, it's kind of a bigger deal. Spoiler.
Then we want the episode remade.
Yeah, right. People might complain. So, what changed? What changed from first page to the last episode? To mix metaphors. What changed from the beginning to the end? And what changed is your understanding of that character, your understanding of the relationship. You have a rich model in your own mind of who or what that person or character is. And so when we think at CleverPet about like why is it interesting to see dogs and cats playing electronic games, is and we don't have really a vocabulary for any of this, but we can see new dimensions on how they think, how they react, where they're making decisions, what's confusing them, what doesn't. Those kinds of things that we see, that we're able to observe, obviously they're really relevant when we're dealing with children maybe, and they're probably also pretty relevant when we're dealing with each other, but they're the things that end up becoming the fabric of a relationship and widening and deepening and your understanding of some other mind. So to the extent that we can know more and become more sensitive to the kinds of dimensions of how an animal is thinking and how they're making decisions, I think those things will make us care about them a lot more. And then that will lead to a whole bunch of other imperatives. So if you know your dog or your cat is really bored because you're able to now finally observe that, well, now you have an obligation to do something about it. Whereas before, if you couldn't see it, it's not going to make any difference for you.
It's interesting. It kind of ties into there's a trend called the humanization of pets. And so what you see is really over the last 10 or 15 years, you've really seen this change in how people think about, do they own a pet, or are they a pet parent? Are they a pet, are they a puppy mom, or are they, do they have a puppy, and what you see is that correlates to not just a growth in spending per household, but also an explosion of the kinds of things that people spend on. Because, and Blair, maybe you could speak a little bit, but, people are, some people are delaying having children because they're having pets, and they're getting some of those needs kind of met, those human needs met with their pets. Do you see other opportunities that are kind of interesting?
Yeah, it's just making me think of some focus groups research we did years ago, and it's one of those things, when you experience it, you remember it years later, and it was a grown man. I think he was probably like a concrete or a pipe fitter, big guy, and we basically just asked an open-ended question: if there's one thing you could wish for your pet, what would it be? And he broke down and cried, and just said, to talk to my pet. And you see that, and it's just so honest. And so I don't know if it's humanization of pets, or if we're becoming
the petization of humans.
Something different. I don't know. But, somewhere it's certainly increasing as we understand more. You talked about if they're bored, but what if they're stressed or if they're in pain or if they're scared? Do they have these emotions? And I think anyone who has a pet would say, of course they do. Why does my dog run around our yard and bound and tuck like a ski racer going over hills? Why does he do that? He clearly is having joy doing that. And so I don't remember what the question was, by the way. So,
but we heard about the pipe fitter crying,
yeah.
so we feel good. I mean, it's a heart-tugging moment.
What was the question?
Well, no, is there a movement of like more opportunity? So as there's a different understanding that's going on.
I mean, for sure, and I think that's one reason why, growing up in kind of a big CPG company for years, it was all about products, and why it's been so exciting to be part of organizing a new group and new work is there's just an explosion of innovation, and it's frankly not happening in kibble or in the can. There's always nutritional improvements, but it's all of these products and services that are surrounding the pet, conveniences, people that want a frictionless experience with their pet, whether it's e-com or whether it's a service or if it's training or care, all of these things that, didn't exist previously. So, again, I don't know if I answered the question.
No, it's good. So we had a question back here.
As an entrepreneur, I can tell you I know the space quite well. And last year, in 2018, there was exactly 2 Series A's raised, 2 for pet therapeutic companies. We're almost halfway through 2019, and in 2019, we're still at 2 companies that got Series A funding. So there's a complete dearth of money going into the system in today's world. And this isn't just me speaking. This is an industry issue. So my question is, over the past 5 years, is Purina internally shifting investments? Are they looking at opportunities and expending money differently today than they were 5 years ago? Because I assure you, the life science VCs out here, they have their heads in the sand and they're not putting money into veterinary health.
So I want to restate that question. For the purposes of the video, the question was: so if this is this one, we're seeing all these big trends. Why are the deals, the Series A investments and the later stage investments, not keeping up with that? Especially when you look at traditional VCs. And Blair, do you want to kind of? And the question was specifically: has Purina changed how they approach corporate venturing for that reason?
I'm going to have to answer it in 2 parts. First, when we talk about pharma, Purina does not participate in pharma investments. So that would be probably the most direct category, pharma, and then collars and leashes and beds, things of that sort. Those are areas that specifically we have not in the past pursued and are not on our agenda right now. It's not that we don't believe in those things. It's there are companies that are much more directed into the pharma space and set up for the long-term investment and research behind those. That said, just about any other category that you want to talk about, Purina has changed the way that we're approaching investment. Just through 9 Square, in the past several years, we've done, I want to say, close to 20 investments just through our small team. That's not to mention other M&A activity that's gone on. I think what's changed is money is almost free to many startups. There's so much money looking for places to invest. Of course, they are looking for I would say an ever-increasing or more rapid return on demonstrating proof of concept, scalability, and speed to money kind of thing. And yet, for Purina, it's not really about the money that we bring to the table. It's about all the other resources that a big company, just in St. Louis, 2,500 employees, experts in every kind of function you could imagine a big company having, from the R&D side over to logistics to packaging to marketing, research, all of those aspects. That's really the resources that we, regulatory, there you go, legal. Those are really the resources that we can help small startups with. That, so yes, it's about the money, but it's about the other things that we think we can help with. So I know that may not be what you wanted to hear. Like, I was excited about what you're doing, and yet I know it's probably not something, but do we know people doing it? Yes. Do we know people that you might want to engage with? Or absolutely. So.
One thing I'll just add to that we see from the other companies that have come through the Pet Care Innovation Prize is typically they report that it was very difficult for them to get angel investors or to get their first venture funding or whatever, but that once they did, those investors really liked what they saw about the pet category, and those investors then become interested in the space. And so one of the things that we're trying to do as we grow the activities of the Pet Care Innovation Prize and the network is introduce those investors to each other, because once somebody's invested in CleverPet, they're likely to invest in something else in the category. And if you guys think about it as an ecosystem, it's really good for you to think as an ecosystem, because your investors can be somebody else's investors and vice versa. Once somebody has once they've done the due diligence to do something in the pet space, they tend to like the pet space. Are there other questions? No? What? Maybe Carlton, if we could pass the mic down to you, and what did you, when you heard the startups, when they came up here and talked a little bit about it, what did you hear that that you thought, hey, that's kind of unique, that's kind of interesting about the space? What was something that just resonated for you? And I'm going to ask each of you to do that. And it's not to say that was the best pitch or the worst pitch or whatever, but sometimes it's helpful, I think, for a startup to know what resonates with other people. What part of your story is really compelling. So what did you hear that was compelling?
Yeah, so this is not a reflection on any of the startups I don't mention. I really like DogLog. It's one of those things that I had a sick dog, and we deal with, everyday pet parents with sick dogs and cats, and there really isn't a good solution for what you guys are doing. So I think that's pretty cool. That's more. Yeah.
We just.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that one's good. I mean, the monetization challenge, everyone's gonna have a concern about. So happy to chat about that. But I do think that those personal experiences that drive your vision for the company it's going to be what keeps you going. When after IndieBio, they talk about the valley of death where you haven't got your angel money and you're running on fumes, and it's that passion that keeps you going. I do think the Black Mirror thing was pretty cool, and so I mean I thought all the startups were good. I mean, I thought it was cool that I didn't realize that VDog was 14 years old. I thought this vegan dog food thing was pretty new. So it's there can be startups of any age. I like that.
Cool.
So yeah, I liked them all.
Cool. All right. You don't. And by the way, it's okay to just pick one that you don't like. And Leo, when we get to you, you're going to have to pick somebody other than CleverPet. So June, what did you see that was kind of compelling, and hear that was kind of compelling?
Right, I thought all of them were really interesting, and really thinking about the integration of software, hardware, biology, right? Other fields now being applied to pet care, and a lot of it is based off of need, where the problems are. I think everyone had really interesting startups. I do really like the implants because I'm a big quantified self person. I want data, and so yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Leo.
I guess I like the vegan dog food, cat food thing. It's something that I've always kind of wondered about, and it's great to hear about a team that's been tackling it for a while and probably has a lot of the problems, nutrition issues worked out.
And Blair?
I was intrigued by, being a consumer guy, I was intrigued by the target that that you've developed. I think we were talking about it at the table, but
Talking about Teresa with Puppy Mama?
yeah, Puppy Mama, when you can develop such a tightly focused consumer target, then I start to wonder how are we going to solve their problems? What are those problems they have? Products, services. I mean, to me, that expands into, some interesting ideas, right? Oftentimes we come from what do I know and what am I going to make, and then I try and go find my consumer. This is different. I've found a very interesting group of people, and then I can do a very good job of identifying what problems do they have to solve. So kind of the scientific method that you described, I mean, that starts to get very encompassing. It can get distracting and probably lots of ideas, and where do you start? But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up here in just a minute. But do we have any other questions from the audience? We have two questions. Yeah, so there's you guys really kind of play in that channel because
we sell to the vet channel, but I wanted to share a company I saw yesterday called Barkaboo. They're from Spain, and they have this AI technology, and so they're sort of doing like a pet MD with like questions where you get your questions answered, but the customer are basically the companies like us and Purina learning about what the consumers are doing. So basically, it's a B2B, enterprise analytics play for CPG and retail. That was pretty cool, and I actually don't see a ton of because I did B2B SaaS for about 5 years. I don't see a lot of that focused in the pet space, and I think that could be interesting.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the petcareinnovationprize.com website, a couple of our past winning companies, one Fetch Find, they do training and knowledge management for pet professionals, so to help them keep their certification and things, and she's really done some exciting things in the industry. And one of our most recent winners, actually a grand prize winner, Guardian Vets, it's providing after-hours triage for veterinary practices for them to deliver service and have quality of life. So they are out there. They just don't happen to be represented here today. And, it's important to think in pet, you've got the veterinary channel, you've got the pet parent, you've got all of these different people that you're serving, that there are multiple B2B plays. What was your question?
Yes, my question is, I'm reading a lot about, say, new technologies for pets, and most of them seem to be, say, digital toys, or cameras, monitoring systems, and things like that. I'm curious about, what was the panelists' thoughts about, say, the software aspect. So what I'm saying is, like, say, games for pets, or some kind of software for pets, independent of having a particular toy, and things like that.
Yeah, so maybe, Leo, if you could talk about that. We were actually back at the table talking about the fact that once you've opened up some of your data and some of your APIs, that people are actually able to start creating games. So, do you think there's an opportunity to build a software on top of your hardware platform?
I certainly think that there's a lot of opportunity with respect to software, but I think we're in very early days yet. I think developers don't know how to make software for dogs and cats. I think people don't know how to pick and choose software for their dog or the cat. I think there's a lot of people that don't know anything, which is fine because I'm not saying I know anything. I mean, I've been at this for a while. I think as I mentioned earlier, I think one of the mistakes that we made was that we didn't embrace our ignorance earlier in the company and make it really easy for people to try things out, be creative. The way that I think we're going to see this ecosystem grow is by putting simple tools in the hands of 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, letting them, they have the time, they have the inclination, they've got a dog or a cat that they want to teach to play video games, and I think they're going to be the ones to show us how to build software for for animals.
So
because no one else really
Minecraft
has-
for pets.
Sorry.
Minecraft for pets.
Yeah, like if Minecraft before you sicked the kids on, probably the wrong verb, but before the kids got into it, Minecraft was a pretty, there wasn't very much going on. It took their creativity to actually grow out the amazing potential of that as a kind of a platform. It was block building platform, but I think that we're going to see the same thing with pets.
Just add a comment to that. We were meeting with the Walmart Innovation Group and just share something that they shared with us, which was that they don't go to consumers anymore or adults. They go work with teenagers. And that's where they do anything that's related to technology. They go to high schools and they work with kids there because that's where they're going to create the ideas that the parents and the grandparents are going to use. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So you're saying, like in the human side, in the game world, there's hardware platforms that software, game developers and publishers can build on top of. And you're asking if our panelists think that anything like that is imminent, or is it going to be always tied to the hardware? Is that what you're kind of? Right. So Natalie, are you guys in your implant? Is that going to have gaming platform, or is that going to have an API for gaming, or VR and everything? She says. So I want to just kind of ask. I think that's an interesting thing for people that have a tech perspective. Is just really quickly, what do you guys think? Is there an imminent point where there is actually an opportunity for software, or do you think that those things are going to stay coupled in pet for a while?
So. The big missing piece that we needed to make all of this work was the ability to deliver really precise food rewards. That is how all of AI basically works because you can provide a reinforcement signal. You can provide there's a cost function, right? You can provide feedback to whatever the learner is so that they can learn to do whatever new thing you want them to learn to do. You can have a toy on the ground and it can do whatever, but if it's not able to reliably provide a reinforcement signal to the dog or the cat, whoever's playing with it.
Well, and the reinforcement is also a way to get feedback back to the system, right? I mean, it's like it works for both purposes.
Yeah, it's two-way, and that's how you keep their persistent engagement. That's how you kind of. If you want to build a rope bridge across a chasm, first you take your bow and arrow and you shoot the arrow with a small string, and then the small string leads to a bigger string, leads to a bigger string, leads to eventually chain and a big bridge, right? You've got to start with a reliable feedback signal, and then from there we are able to teach the dog or the cat to pay attention to a light, and but it took the reliable feedback signal.
So, June, do you have any thoughts on whether, this is a pretty specific thing, but do you have any thoughts on whether software is going to be a thing on a standalone thing, or software or games or content, or do you think that they're always going to be coupled to a tangible product?
So I'm definitely less familiar with the gaming industry, but I would say from the software side, data is huge right now, right? From the medicine side, even with your product, it's all, there's a lot of stuff that can happen in the data, and whether that data gets used for gamification later, whether that data used for health or better nutrition or formulation development of new products, I think that's going to be really big.
Great. Carlton, do you have any thoughts?
I don't have a thought about your core question about the platform, but I guess what I think would be sort of maybe the interim step to what you're talking about are games that enhance the interaction between the pet parent and the pet. It's not just the pet having having some level of stimulation, but it's really deepening that bond between the pet parent and the pet. And because not all dogs are food motivated. They're much more motivated by like whatever praise we give them. And so I have border collies. They stare at us and observe everything we do. And that interaction between me and the dog is way more important to me, and I think to them, than occupying themselves when I'm not there.
We're gonna wrap up here, but you have one last question?
An interesting one. If CleverPet is going to achieve this scalability that we and Purina desire to achieve, envision that our pets are going to be addicted to video games.
So the question is, if CleverPet achieves scale, like everybody up here would like them to, will our pets be addicted to video games? Do you want to? Do you need to talk to counsel before you have to answer this question?
No. I would just say it's a problem when people are addicted to video games because there's a big world to go and explore. That's not the case with dogs and cats. There's no alternative life that they should be outliving, right? There's just an empty foreign spaceship in which they've been imprisoned, that they're just hanging out in. They don't get to. It's all, yeah. It's like you've been abducted and you're on another planet and you can't touch anything.
But you've been abducted by people that will scratch you behind the ears.
Yeah, no, they're nice. They're benign abductors, but but that's it's good when you give something meaningful to them, and if they're going and playing games a lot, I think that's better than them not having anything to do.
So, Blair, I'm going to close this out with you. One of the things when we do the boot camp is frequently we have one of the Purina behavioralists come and talk to the founders of the companies that are the winners, and people are pretty frequently amazed at the amount of information that they have about how people how pets interact with the world and how people interact with their pets. Do you have any? I remember you talking a little bit about working in the world of cats, with the big cats and stuff. But do you have any stories that you could share?
Well, I don't know if it's so much a story, but maybe just even big companies too. We have to be careful to think that we know everything. This is going back probably a dozen years ago. We had some questions about what was the nature of cats. We spend a lot of time thinking about dogs, but what about cats? And our researchers spent some time, and they ended up at some zoos, and then they ended up working with some zoos that specifically had African wildcats. And some of our executives, they found it interesting, and they said, well, we need to do more work on that. Where are more African wildcats? And so we ended up going to South Africa and going to some of the cat preserves, and I got chased around by some cheetahs dragging a dead chicken on a rope. Don't ask how that's. I'll save that for later. But
no, I
think what we learned was our scientists came back saying, we thought we knew everything, and we absolutely didn't. And they learned so much watching cats in the wild of all sizes, and so I think there's just so much to learn, right? I think we talked a lot about just the advances in technology, advances in the life sciences, obviously cognition, and just understanding the pets that we make part of our lives. And so I just think it's an exciting category, right? I mean, it's fun. It's also kind of blessed with unconditional love that we all experience, right, from our pets, which maybe is what makes it, the perfect place to have, a career and a business where you can benefit these pets. So,
great. Well, thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much to our startups. Thank you for attending or for watching this video. So just to wrap up, we're with the Pet Care Innovation Prize. Thank you for hosting us here at IndieBio here in San Francisco. There's a great pet care startup community here in the Northern California area, but we see that in a lot of places. We encourage you to go to petcareinnovationprize.com to learn about the prize. If you have a startup, we award cash and business support to 5 startups every year. And then and some of those startups are moving on to do more things with us, where we bring them together with other resources and things, and we help support them as they grow. We'd love to hear what you're doing. We'd love to have you apply. And if you haven't yet done a pet care startup, we think you ought to consider it. Thanks a lot and have a great night.